Hi, I'm Kim.
I'm Brad.
We're 626 Ohana, California, and today we're going to talk about what happens if you're about ready to lose your DVC points with everything that's going on. So please like, subscribe, and follow along with our Ohana. So unfortunately, I'm sorry if this is kind of one of the things that you're weighing against at the moment. But we talked to Disney, we've done some research and tried to figure out how can you make the most of a situation. Especially if you're one of those people that are past your date where you can bank your points into future years. You don't want to lose those 2019 points that if your contract year is about ready to come up and you're kind of debating what to do. But first of all, let's give you a quick update as to what Disney is doing for DVC cancellations at this moment. Right now, they are automatically canceling any new reservation 7 days in advance if they are predicting it's going to be closed still a week from then. So that's something to keep in mind as that comes up. Borrowed points are going to go back to their use year. And then if you had bank points, I asked flat out, would people lose those points or what was going to happen? And I got, we don't know. There was a lot of hesitation and skipping around that question. Nobody wants to give a direct answer to that right now. And I think that's a part of them trying to figure out what options they have available. So just kind of something to keep in mind. Or if there is any options available. So right now, Disney is saying you have to use your points by the time they expire. That's the only direction we're being given at this time. It's subject to change, but as of right now, that's what's going on. So you might be one of those people that go, well, the resorts are closed. I'm coming up on my end of my use year. And what do? I'm in trouble. And maybe I thought a little bit about RCI or Disney Collections and what that all means. So we're going to break that down for you. Anybody that's bought direct has the option to put these points into RCI Disney Collections, things that kind of fall under those, and Concierge, Adventures by Disney, Disney Cruise Line, Disneyland Resorts, but the only one I think that doesn't apply is Shanghai, which is interesting because I found that out. So if you want to use your points at Shanghai, you cannot use your points at Shanghai from my understanding. The resellers this affects is you had to buy your resale contract prior to March 11th, 2011. So if you bought anytime after March 12th, 2011, this does not apply to you. You don't have the option to bank into RCI. That's an unfortunate benefit for those who've bought direct or prior to that date.
Yeah,
So
if you bought resale after that date,
yeah,
you're
and
kind of out of luck of what you can do.
we're in that with part of our points. So we have bought resale after that date. So some of our points fall into that. Some of our points we've bought direct. So we've kind of fall on both ends of that spectrum of those options. RCI, you have to bank them 45 days before the end of your use year. So I actually was wrong. I thought our use year was February. It's March. So every year by March, we have to have put those points in, converted them over into RCI by January 15th of 2021 of next year if we have these 2020 points for our contract. So that's just a date to keep in mind. I'll get more into it because there's actually something else that's interesting about that. RCI has nightly that you can book that anywhere from 10 months to 2 days out. That means a different nightly, anything under 7 nights. 7 nights, a weekly rate is you can book from 2 years to 1 day in advance. And it has to be 7 nights to be considered a full week. Deposit, you have to put in at least 10 points, and you can only put them in by a divisible of 10. So you can't put 115 points in, okay? That's not going to be possible. And everything that you've put into RCI and converted, you cannot, they're permanent points. You can't take them back to DVC if things change. You've made a permanent decision there. They're non-refundable. So that's something to be aware of. You don't want to do that and, tomorrow, next week, 2 weeks, Walt Disney World opens, you go, oops, I want those points back. You're not going to get them back. So just be cognizant of your choices. The other thing is there are a little bit of hidden fees that we found. One of them is that your points do not cover all-inclusive resorts. Some resorts say that all-inclusive are optional, that you don't have to buy them. You're not going to get your meals, the sports, drinks, things like that would be included. But however, if you want to go and say, I want everything paid up in full, it is per person per night. So keep that in mind. When I talked to a member services, they said it was that they'd seen anything from $75 per person per night up to $250 per person per night. So that could add up quickly. But if it's something you'd want and say, I don't want to worry about my meals, if I go to the bar and I want a cocktail, I don't want to think about it, or I don't know, I want to go play tennis and I want to go out on a snorkeling boat, that would already be taken care of if that was what that resort did. So it's just those fees to be aware of. Read the fine line, because I found a few other places, and I'll get to that, where there were some hidden fees involved. So something to be aware of. So the other thing is, it's different. RCI considers a calendar year, not a use year. So they look at 2000 as one calendar year, 2001 another, etc. So if we were right now to use our use year points for 2020 and bank them into RCI for December 31st, 2020, we'd have till December 31st, 2022 to use them. If we waited till January 1st, because remember, for our contract, we'd have to bank them into RCI before January 15th. Okay, so our 45 days for us would be January 15th. But if I decide to hold off till January 1st, 2nd, something like that, and put my points into RCI for us, then I wouldn't have those points expire till 2023. So if you have a use year that you might be able to get more time out of, it might be interesting to do the math and figure out, do I wait till after January and I'll have longer to use my points and plan ahead. And more availability, things like that. There was some availability when I looked at RCI. Some resorts didn't have availability that I might have liked in this year, next year. So maybe it's kind of one of those things, I'd want more time. You would be able to get more time out of booking into 2020 points into 2022 than you would at Disney into 2021. Just something to think about. So difference of those expiration. So that's kind of cool. If you know, like next year, I want to go to Disney, but maybe the following year RCI sounds better and I'd rather bank and play around and borrow and do things like that in the future, then you can make one of these RCI trips kind of happen for you. So I just took a look at the Caribbean, saw what was available, saw what looked like kind of a nice resort from the photos. Of course, you never know until you go. There was a St. Lucia Oasis in Margot. It was a 1-bedroom, 1-week rental, and it was 100 points, but there was a hidden fee of $20 per person for a ferry pass. So that was a hidden fee that I'm talking about. Each resort you'd have to kind of look and read the finite details to make sure that you're not missing something, that you're not all of a sudden surprised because you didn't read the little writing in between. Okay, so the other thing you could do is you could put these points into a Disney collection. That includes Disneyland Paris, Walt Disney World, Disneyland Resorts, Tokyo, Hong Kong, Disney Cruise Line, and Adventures by Disney. Those are non-DVC rooms at the resorts, okay? So if I wanted to, say I want to go to Disneyland Sequoia 1 week, would cost me 319 points. Now you can imagine that is kind of like their lower end. That's kind of like their value resort for Paris. In a way, their cheaper resort. So if I put in 319 points for a week at Disney World, I'm going to get a really nice room. So you can see where people say that comparison, RCI, Disney Collections, Disney Cruise Line, and Adventures by Disney has always been arguably not a good use of points. But if you're going to lose them anyways, well, you may want to think about doing something with them. So that's the argument to be made here. Not the best use of your points, but use them or lose them. So you're kind of in this situation that you might consider using them instead. So the other thing we found out was at the Port Orleans Riverside, a Riverview 1 week in July would cost 210 points. Still kind of expensive. Not exactly what I would consider a 210 point room for a week, but times are difficult. So we love the Port Orleans Riverside, so that was why we looked at it. The other thing to think about is Disneyland Cruise Line and Adventures by Disney. You can pay one person in cash and one person in points. So if you had a trip that you wanted to do and you thought, well, you know, it's really expensive, but you've had these points expire and one person you can pay for, but the other family member or two or however that works out in the wash, you could do something maybe a little different. And not, once again, not the best use of points in a normal situation, but in these times, I mean, a Disney cruise, right? That's great. Adventures by Disney is something Brad and I really, really want to do. So it's something that we're like, well, you know, if things continue, maybe. The one thing to know is what Disney Cruise Line is doing, because they've obviously canceled some cruises. You have 12 months. You have to find a cruise that leaves within 12 months to book, okay? If they postponed 1 year trips and say you've already done a Disney cruise and paid for your points, right now, if you're going to take that risk and you say, what would happen if they still continue to cancel cruises? What is the refund policy for these points at this point? Right now, Disney is doing 12 months domestically. So all around the Caribbean, Mexico, Alaska, it's like that. They're giving you 12 months to rebook that sailing. For Europe, they're giving 15 months. So Europe is 15 months to book another cruise within that time frame. I think you may have to book them relatively quickly, but that's about the amount of time you have to do so. So just something to keep in mind. And then the other thing we might look at is Brad and I said, well, you know, things are unsure. We want to use our DVC points and maybe switch them over to a Disney Collections. Living in Southern California, we might consider like a 4 nights long weekend staycation in October over Halloween and stuff. And that, with a pool view at the Disneyland Resort, it would cost us 172 points for 4 nights. So you're seeing what these values are. You're seeing some options. And it's really great that you have options, because if you've already missed your banking deadline, you're not sure you want to do, or worst of all, I mean, next year for Walt Disney World, it could be really hard to find rooms, because now you've got all these people, depending how long this whole situation goes on. The longer it goes on, the more competition there are going to be for Disney Vacation Club rooms. If you're like, well, I don't want to worry about the competition, I'd rather just kind of make life easy, try something else, those are things that you can do with those points. So with that, I hope you learned something. We gave you some great ideas and tips. I hope you're not in this situation, but if you do, this is way to make the most out of it. With that, we're going to say goodbye and find your magic. Bye, everyone.